you want to be on the recording, speak, and if you don't. All right. Let's jump over to there. So 2024, the year in review. In November, we didn't think we would do one in December because no one wants to be doing these in December because everyone's gone by the end of December, hopefully being the third week. So kia ora, folks. Tihe mori ora e ngā maunga whakahi e ngā Waitukukiri ki te tupune tēnā koe tēnā koutou katoa. So welcome to everyone on this side of the ditch. And for our wonderful people across the other side, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands in which you meet, and of course, by extension, we meet also, whose cultures and customs have nurtured and continue to nurture your land. And we honour the presence of the ancestors and elders past, present, and emerging. So welcome in to this session. We see this every month, but let's flash up these pretty faces again. So you've got me by myself this time, so we're hoping things are going to keep going well. So there's a bunch of people that work in our team with bunches of differing roles, changing and spreading across APAC. So the Aussie and New Zealand wisdom is spreading across APAC. We're slowly moving our tentacles across there. For today's agenda, we've just done our welcome, so there we go. Welcome everyone. We had a little round the room for the people who are on the call as well, introducing themselves, which is fantastic. So we're going to kick off with a few of our excellent educators sharing some stories from 2024 and some cool things that they have done. Then we will round it out with a bit of a what's new from Google. And then, of course, at the end, if there are any questions, feel free to stay around and ask those after the recording, so you can feel free to ask any question you like. In the chat as well, and that will wrap us up for the year. So we are usually joined by my sidekick. I think I'm probably Chris Betcher's sidekick at this point in time. So Chris, but he is somewhere over in the Philippines. I think this afternoon he was diving, so he did test the Wi-Fi and said it was incredibly spotty where he was. So we've decided that he's going to leave me in charge of the last one for the year. So hopefully everything will go fantastic. So we have 5 wonderful educators, Jeremy, Donna, Martin, Kathryn, and Ryan, who are going to share some little pearls of wisdom with you. Now, we, as always, are recording this so we can let everyone see it afterwards, for those people who can't make it. And for those of you who are on the call, of course, you can go back and rewatch if you like. So without further ado, because I've talked for 5 minutes, now let's jump into the first of our wonderful presenters, Mr. Jeremy Ferguson. Jeremy, take over and either give me that wonderful next slide, please, or feel free to kick me off and present if you like.
I'll probably go next slide method, just so it's easier. But kia ora everyone. As has been said, my name is Jeremy Ferguson. When I used to do professional development after my first stint in the classroom, I used to refer to myself as a recovering teacher. So I suppose now that I'm back in the classroom, I suppose I'm a relapsed teacher. But we live with that. So I'm a teacher and a digital pedagogy specialist at Kōwhai Intermediate in Auckland, New Zealand. Basically, if you're familiar with sport, or we just had Coldplay there last week. It's right next to Eden Park Stadium in Auckland, which is cool because there's all sorts of opportunities that we get to have there. So basically, my context is that I've just returned back into a classroom teaching position after some time away doing professional development in a couple of capacities, and I've gone in with obviously that as a focus, but also looking at ways in which I can help supports the teaching and learning in classes around me. So with starting in NZ our term 3, so it's from July onwards, basically everything gets more crazy between July and December, and so I've been looking at ways in which I can help teachers around me who are time poor look for solutions and co-construct ideas in which we can help them move forward. In amongst all of that, we also had the health and safety people come and look at our school playground and tell us it wasn't fit for purpose anymore, and tell us that it basically got red taped and told that we're not allowed to use it anymore. So we undertook a knowledge-a-thon in which kids had to learn 100 different multi-choice questions, all on, sorry, not multi-choice, they learn 100 general knowledge questions and then got quizzed on it. And of course, because I was the guy who knew the computer stuff, I got tasked with creating a form that would make that work. So that was one of the things that I'll show you today. And also we know that this time of year looks like assessments and report writing and all that kind of stuff. So I've been trying to make some solutions for that. So if you could please head to the next slide for me, Steve, that'd be grand. Cool, so this is a little insight into our Knowledge-a-thon fundraiser form. So you can see, obviously, you'll be familiar with Google Forms and Google Sheets, I should say. They mesh really neatly together. So at last look, I think we had about 400 people who had filled in the form. So that's basically looked like setting up self-marking questions for the ones that are easy, and then having to go and manually mark them. But it's been a lot easier for my colleagues as a whole, in terms of being able to have a form that someone else has created for them that they can just literally flick out to their kids on the classroom or however it might have been, that they can then fill in. But that's a really good example. If you're not familiar, I'm sure most of you will be familiar with the nice syncs between forms and sheets. It's a good way of looking at the individual data, but also data on a larger scale. So that was one example. If we go to the next slide as well, please. And this is an example of where I put together a spreadsheet to store all of the assessment data and report writing for my colleagues. Yeah, cool. Basically, I can recall back to when I was a beginning teacher and I did some whole bunch of general comments, as you do for your classes. And I'm not sure if our friends in Australia have the issue, but we have a student management system here in NZ that's quite a large one in the scheme of things. That is quite sort of archaic in the way that it's designed. I'm sure NZ educators are probably starting to fill in the blanks as I speak. But basically, I wrote about 10 different report comments, and then it didn't save, and all those hours worth of time was gone. So what I thought was, okay, I'm never going to allow that to happen again. So next came the docs, and then there have been various iterations as we've gone past. So to a point where in that bottom left image, you can see that there's a spreadsheet where I've got a little simple formula using in that far column that counts the amount of characters that are used in the report comment codes. We have a maximum number of characters we can do per report comment because there's a set template. And so that's just a nice little visual representation for me as I'm writing my comments to make sure that I'm doing the right thing in that. So for example, yeah, and then the colors are all different conditional formats to make it nice and easy at a glance. So yeah, for me, someone with a little bit of experience and a keenness for having a play and having a tutu, this has ended up being something that I can then share to my colleagues, that they can just make a copy and repurpose for their own thing. So that's basically been me in terms of looking for problem posing. The next one as well is we have a standardized writing test on the next slide. Sorry, Steve. And that's just a simple little formula that has been put together. So as the teachers enter the data for the different categories, there's drop-down boxes. There's some formula in column J, I think it is, column J, based on a set formula, on a set rubric. And so it basically means that teachers don't have to go and manually add up all the different criteria, which if you're doing it 30 odd times, it can be time consuming. So that's the whole mantra, looking to save some time for people, provide solutions instead of problems. And basically that's just living with the mantra that the tech should be the easy part as opposed to the hard part. So that's me. Thanks so much for your time, and all the best for the rest of for the run-ins to the crazy time. But yeah, looking forward to hearing what everyone else has to share today too. So cheers.
Nice, Jeremy. Thank you. I mean, I am always in awe of people who can wrangle sheets to make them do exactly what they want to do. I can always explain what I want a sheet to do, and the tricky bit is making the sheet do that thing. So yeah, massive kudos there. Nice work, and thank you very much for sharing. All right, we will jump over to the next one. You have no sound change, I think. We are just check your settings here. It might be your.
You can hear me? Cool. Thanks, Steve. Hey, great to be here. I'm Martin Hughes, and I work with schools all over New Zealand, and I love doing that, and I've been doing it for about 20 years. So my focus is a relentless focus on breaking the link between the higher student outcomes that we all want and the increased teacher workload that none of us want. And I've got a few stories to share with you today that have just happened, really. I've just got in from school. And I noticed, particularly with the arrival of so many amazing AI tools, that there's with all the schools I work with, there's basically three categories of teachers. There's the first category of teachers who are maybe not using stuff at all. The second category are teachers who are using some of these tools specifically to reduce workload, which I challenge. And then there's the other teachers who are using the tools increasingly well, that are focused on student outcomes, and as a byproduct, we get teacher outcomes. So that's the focus of today. I've made a little Google Classroom. I've uploaded the stuff I'm going to be sharing with you. There's an invite code there and a link. It may not work from your school site because of the settings you may have in your admin console, but if you go in there either now or later with a Gmail account, then that'll hopefully work. So I'll share my screen, and or what am I going to do here to share my screen here?
Just go share screen and kick me off. You're all good.
Okay, the button seems to be grayed out, Steve.
Oh, weird. Okay, on stand by.
Okay.
Grab this. I should be let me just do this.
Okay.
See if that works.
You're now a co-host. Yeah, that's perfect.
Perfect.
And I'll go window. Perfect. So normally I do stuff that is more, I guess, primary school related. But last night when Chris reminded me to get my A into G on this, I thought I'd do something for a high school, in a high school context. So I knocked this together last night. In total, it took, I think, 15 minutes. So it's a whole sort of unit around acids and alkalis. So the content doesn't really matter. It's the process. And Chris was suggesting and requesting really that we use as many of the new Google developments that have happened this year as possible. So I'm using Gemini. I'm using these amazing tabs in Google Docs. They are just outstanding. They're so simple and so effective. We're using drop downs. I'm going to use Google Classroom with rubrics and groups, if any of you join it. I used a Notebook LM to generate a podcast. I also use YouTube in Google Classroom, which again is amazing. I use Diffit, which is not very brand loyal. I'll apologize there, Steve.
No, it's all good. It's a good tool, so why not?
And I also use some of the edu fonts that have been added this year, and also Google Drawings. So number one, I got Gemini to plan a unit of work around acids and alkalis. I got it to summarize it in bullet points, to create a vocabulary list. And then I got it to create some questions. So I got 10 recall questions, and I got 5 higher order questions. All of this, as you know, is generated in a matter of seconds. I got Notebook LM to generate a podcast based on the information that Gemini had created, plus a bit more that I added in. And the kids, part of the assessment here would be for the kids to review the contents of the podcast. I got Gemini to write questions around the most common misconceptions. So building misconceptions into any form of planning is really, really good, but sometimes we don't always think of them. So Gemini is really good at coming up with those. I also asked Gemini, by the way, with all the prompts I do, to include stories, examples, and analogies, because they are really good hooks for people. I came up with a brief template that they would review the 3 experiments that we were going to do. I used some drop-down menus to prompt the kids to reflect well. In addition to that, I uploaded a YouTube clip into Diffit, which created all of this stuff. And then I've added the Gemini prompt just so you can see at the bottom there. So all of that was generated and uploaded to Google Classroom with a rubric in about 15 minutes. So in Google Classroom, which I'm hoping you can see at the minute, I also added a YouTube quiz based on just using the YouTube app that's built into Google Classroom, with multi-choice questions added, because this is practicing the retention and the neural pathways between long-term and short-term memories, that sort of thing. And what else have I done? And then, just as I was sitting down 10 minutes ago, a teacher email came in about today's work. So this is a teacher who was initially a bit reluctant to engage. She's written to the senior leadership team talking about the shift in her class in the last couple of months. And she also sent examples of her most reluctant writer who would not write anything. This was his writing back in July, and it doesn't even make sense. And this is his writing today. And it was all due to changing the way she was teaching writing, plus the use of smart tools, plus a reversal in the order of how the kids were using technology. So a whole lot of nuts and bolts there. So do feel free to go in and have a look at that in Google Classroom afterwards. Happy if anyone wants to contact me. And I think I might just be over 5 minutes, am I?
That's fine. Holy heck. I think if there was a prize for app smashing, Martin, I think you've definitely won it. That was a comprehensive list of tools. Well done. Well done. Hey, look, and it's, I think you're right. And it's one of those things where you kind of touched on it, saying sometimes these things can be an amazing time saver, and other times they can just take up time. So, yeah, no, I applaud you for that. And it's that thing, finding out what works correctly for those kids. So nice work.
Cheers. Thank you.
Love it. Love it. All right. I'm going to go and resume my presenting. Okay. So thank you very much, Martin. Wow. Okay, I will pass everyone over to Donna.
Well, I'm not sure I really want to follow, Martin. Thanks for that, Steve. Or my list of apps is not nearly so long. So when I was thinking about it, I thought, what's been something that has been super helpful but super important this year? So I teach at an independent school, and we go from literally daycare to year 13. And I teach a year 6 class, and so my students leave me in 10 school days, not that I'm counting, but it is 10 school days. And then next year they move into the middle school. We're a one-to-one iPad scenario, and they move into a laptop scenario, and we are a Google Workspace school. So I have collaborated with the year 7 digital lead person and asked her what is it exactly that they are expecting our students to come through with, because we've had conversations in the past where our students haven't really gone through with the skills that middle school have wanted them to have by the time they get to year 7. So then I sat and pondered, how might we ensure that our students leave us with the Google Doc skills that the next school requires them to have, whether it be our middle school or another intermediate that they might go on to. So if you go to the next slide for me, Steve, what I did was I thought, how can I work this into what we're doing this term? And as a PYP school, our central theme has been around the scientific study of evidence promotes understanding. And so we've had this amazing forensic company come in, and they did this super awesome, this whole display with this fake crime scene, and they had kids got to fingerprint and do boot prints, and they were really, really engaged. So to keep the idea going, what I did was I got Gemini to help me write a mystery about what might have happened prior to the scene that they saw in the hockey pavilion. So Gemini wrote the mystery for me, and then I just obviously copied it to a Google Doc, and then I just went through and tweaked it. And I told Gemini that I wanted it to be a kind of a almost like a pick a path. And so I got Gemini to write it in pieces for me. And then I got Canva to generate the images so that I could just have a standard kind of theme to the images as I went through. I found that the image generator in Google Slides wasn't quite giving me the people I wanted, hence I went to Canva. And so we included references to the middle school. So in the mystery adventure that the kids go on, they actually go on a little adventure from our school that leads them through into middle school. And so they visit different places in the two schools and they've got to solve the mystery as they go. But at each point where they find a clue and solve part of the mystery, they have to complete some skills on a Google Doc. And the Google Doc is essentially their journalist notebook that they're keeping their detective notes in as they go through. And I've got a low vision student who really can't see enough. He doesn't have enough vision to just read on the screen. So I open all the work for him in Cami, because then Cami can read it back to him and he can access the activities that way, and he can join in and he can be part of what we do. So if you go to the next slide, Steve. When Steve sends out the slideshow, the image is linked for you. And so it was the case of the missing artifact. And at the end, it gives them, when they've solved it all, they've shared their Google Docs with me, and they have a reveal at the end, but it also shows them what their Google Doc looks like. So they kind of get to self-check. So it means it's not a lot of work for the teacher having to go through and essentially mark everyone's Google Docs. The kids can check themselves. And it's been fantastic. There's been lots of collaboration between the kids and solving the clues, and lots of how do I do this again in a Google Doc? And I've forgotten how to do that. Can you show me? And so it's refreshed a lot of the skills that we take for granted that we've already covered with them, so therefore they know how to do it. But actually, if they don't keep using it, they kind of forget how to do some things. So this has been a really nice way of preparing them for next year. And when I thought about Chris's question of what did I use in this activity that I couldn't have used before this year, I couldn't have tried image generation in Google Slides before this year, and I've definitely included some of those. The background remover in Google Slides has been an absolute game changer. And I don't actually go to Gemini anymore. I just open a new tab and go at Gemini in my Omnibox and then start typing in what I want, and it takes me straight there. So even though it's kind of like one less click than what I might have been doing, all those one less clicks are adding up to a significant time saver for me. So that's me. That's what we have been doing this term.
Amazing. Thank you, Donna. Hey, look, I think it's one of those things where you always hope that you have a good link between one school and another. And I know that kind of clusters of schools were set up for that idea, where if you're a primary school teacher, you go and have a chat with the intermediate school teacher and figure out what the skills were to go through. But seeing this in your case, where you've actually put down a really nice connection to figure out how your kids can be ready for that transition, is a brilliant thing to be able to do. And I think you're right. The doc skills are one of those things that we kind of forget about. And I feel like there has been a lot of stuff done to docs recently, and we almost all need a bit of a brush up on what are all those things in docs now. It's I feel like I could almost do a workshop on docs for a couple of hours now, because there are so many things. So thanks very much for sharing all that, Donna. That's amazing. The way you share just all the different things you use, just incorporate into your stuff is absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much. Let's jump over to our next presenter. Ryan, jump on in.
Thank you. Yeah, and if you're going to follow somebody on LinkedIn, I cannot recommend Donna enough. She puts up more tips and tricks than like people that do this stuff for a living, so highly recommend it. So my name is Ryan. I work in the ACT. I taught physics and STEM for 20 years and engineering and stuff. And now I'm in Canberra, and I am lucky enough to have transitioned from the classroom to a system level sort of role, where I work in digital pedagogy, so supporting teachers with anything that makes their job and their practice easier, more satisfying, more effective, and then also online safety education. Both of them keep me occupied. But I was very lucky. So we have Workspace Plus, which means in Google Classroom, we had Read Along that just appeared one day, which meant no security assessments, which is like a Christmas present every single time it happens. But we also have a real big literacy push here. So we were looking for ways to incorporate things we had access to. And Read Along, the way it worked in Classroom, sometimes things need a couple iterations to be really good. Read Along was one of those things that just really worked really well from the get-go. So I was able to wrangle about 4 schools, primary schools, with a year 5 class, 3 year 4 classes, and 4 year 3 classes to see if read along could be something that was a regular supporting sort of digital tool that these teachers could use. Now that bottom bullet point, it doesn't mean that there were 5 EALD students. It meant that there were 5 teachers in that group of 8 classes that indicated they had more than 25% EALD, and you can see the other things down there as well. So slide me, Steve. Thank you. If you don't have read along yet, or you're not using it, it essentially is an AI support tool that helps young people read, and it listens to them, and it provides advice, and it has a memory, and most importantly, it gives you little stars, which I found addictive. I'm almost embarrassed to talk about the over 2,000 stars I have, but it's really designed for our younger readers. But we actually found in this trial that high school teachers and even college, which is our year 11, 12, they adore read along, because nothing's better during a 2-hour class when you're talking about calculus and saying, all right, everybody pop in the classroom and just take a 5-minute brain break and read Farmer Luke Goes to the Cow Shop or something like that. So we found our high school and even older teachers were loving it as well. If you could slide again. But one of the best things about read along is that it has analytics built right into Classroom. And you can compare students to one another over a certain book. You can even compare students to other students over a series, like perhaps 5 different books. It tells you what they've read, what they've missed, what it helped with, what they need help with, who might have skipped what. And the analytics are there, like one click, and you have all this wonderful stuff. So how did the trial go? If we could slide forward. So I asked them what were the barriers, and you can see the form responses came in. The ability to differentiate was something that they wish was a little bit easier, and that's something that I'm going to pick up so they don't have to worry about it. People love more books, and there's a very big debate about should we be able to just AI generate a book, and I'm very happy to say that now all of these books are written by electric skeletons covered in flesh. And they're all cited. So none of these things are just AI generated, knocking them out. There's almost 1,000 books, I think, now as well. You can see that some of the comments here, if you don't have devices, it's an issue, but it is a browser app as well. I just don't think you can keep the analytics data as well. So it takes time, obviously, to build a habit, but I think anything does. But I also asked about what the enablers were. So if we can slide forward. Excuse me. The analytics was by far the best thing. And interestingly, the exact same amount of teachers that said the ability to differentiate was hard was met by one more teacher who said, yeah, that actually made it really, really easy. I tend to fall towards the easy side, but I also get more time to play with these tools. Like the selection of books and the student response to the app itself and how it worked was incredibly large and high and wonderful. A majority of the students used it. Almost all the student responses were positive. I think there was one comment about a student that had hay fever that was really having a hard time, but that was the most negative thing I could find about students' interactions with it. And you could see that people are requesting filtering stuff on the enablers. Whenever we all do our best. But if we go one more slide forward, the final results, 80% of those teachers who are busy, it was right at the end of term 3, it was over the course of term 3, and this wrapped up at term 3, 80% of busy teachers that had almost no professional learning intend to keep using read along in Google Classroom as a regular part of their literacy practice. And my next steps are essentially, I'm going to create a Google Classroom. I'm going to put in a ton of different books, all designed and described and annotated. And now in Google Classroom, with a click of a link, I am going to enable any of our teachers to visit that classroom, tick box any of the assignments they want, and that will hopefully help with that differentiation problem. If I can put in the description, these books are decodables for long O sounds. I don't know what any of that means. And that way they don't have to search it themselves. They just go into the big Google Classroom, clickety, 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 and it ends up in theirs. So that was me. That was read along in the ACT.
Wow. Thank you, Ryan. I'm really stoked I didn't agree tonight to presenting these, because these are absolutely amazing. And I love the point you made, Ryan, that even without a lot of PD, they still found this a fairly easy way to follow. So I guess we can give some kudos to the designers on this one, and hoping that that differentiation piece with groups as well becomes a little bit easier as time goes by, because I think there has been that question around differentiation for a long time, and hopefully things are getting better. So thank you very much for sharing all that. Yes, I also have one of my users who has multiple stars, because why not? You know, if you're getting stars for nothing, why not? Awesome. Right. And let's jump over to Kathryn. Come on in.
Hi, everyone. How you going? So I am a little bit of a wild card because I'm an ex-teacher and I predominantly work in vocational training and corporate learning and development, but I always keep an eye on what's happening in schools because we get to teach your students after they leave school. So sometimes it can go the other way as well. Sometimes there's some great things happening on in vocational training, corporate L&D and higher ed that you can also apply to schools. So I've got 3 things that I really wanted to touch base on today. The first one is Notebook LM. And I use this to cluster units. So curriculum in vocational training in Australia, we have individual learning units, much like you have subjects and what you have to teach for subjects. So if you're in like a middle school and you've got 3 or 4 teachers who are teaching cross curriculum, you can input your curriculum documents, look for the similarities, look for different things that you would be able to each teach, make sure you're not having too much duplication. So it's a really great way of collaboratively seeing what you guys are all teaching, so then you can make sure there's consistency, and it's really interesting then for the students across different learning subjects. So I've got a little link there just to show you an example of how I use Notebook LM to be able to do that clustering 6 units. So then I went and asked it a whole bunch of different questions. The second thing I did was to use new gems in Gemini, and I don't know if any of you have had a go at doing that. And this particular example I actually got from a UNESCO example. So Professor Rue Duvacot is a research fellow for UNESCO, and he developed a system for helping migrants and refugees as they enter the country to get their qualifications recognised and do that in a quick way. And one of those is to interview a student and ask them about their work experience. So he came up with this little task called feed up, feed back and feed forward. And it's a little way of thinking about what you have learnt. And it's a great little process with some excellent questions to get a student thinking about initially what was their goal, how did they go along doing it, and then what is the implications for the future. So I've got a little Google Doc there. If you copy and paste that prompt into a Google Gem, or you can just, if you don't have gems and you just want to use Google Straight, make sure Gemini, just make sure you put in hi to get it started. And if you just want to have a little play with it, I would start with how you learned to ride a bike. And so it will ask you questions so you can reflect on how to ride a bike, so you can get a little gist of it. So I really love it because it's covering those really key areas of thinking about goal setting and what you've learned and how you've gained your confidence as you go forward. The last one I've got there is actually a course that I completed, the Google Generative AI for Educators. Can I highly recommend you do that course? It's a back to basics kind of thing. It did say it was going to take 2 to 3 hours, but I have to admit I did finish it in about half an hour. But I'm an everyday high user of AI. So I was able to go through some of that really quickly, but I would highly recommend that course. Last of all, if this is not a Google slide, my next slide, but I've just come back from presenting at a conference in Paris and in Cologne, Germany. I presented at the Practical Pedagogies Conference for the British International Schools, which is absolutely fantastic. 300 school teachers from all around Europe, around the world, even as far as Kazakhstan and those kinds of places as well. And someone shared this, and I just thought it was a really great example. So there was a lot of conversation around how we can use AI in different parts of teaching for assessment, as well as, you know, when should we use it for learning and all of those sorts of conversations. Leon First, he's an English guy, but he lives in Australia, and he came up with this AI assessment scale. And I just thought that was a really neat way of trying to think about how we can get our students to use AI for assessments, and then perhaps not when it's not appropriate to use it as well. So that's the 3 things that I've been using over the last couple of months, and that's it from me.
Amazing. Thank you, Kathryn. Hey, I think you make a really good point about the generative AI for educators course. But yeah, if you are fresh to using generative AI, it might take you 2 to 3 hours because it does step through a lot of stuff and teach you a lot of things on the way. But if you are using generative AI quite a lot, yes, it can be quite a quick one, a nice one to kind of get that little stamp at the end of your passport there to let you know what's going on as well. The assessment scale you've got here as well is one of those things that lots of people are looking for. They're looking for some guidance around how do we actually let students use it or not, or how do we open this up to say, let me know when you've used it, or this one is really not an AI tool. So I think, sorry, not an AI task. So thank you very much for sharing that. Yeah, Leon does create some amazing stuff. So thanks for sharing those. Those are great resources. Wow, that's a lot. So thank you very much, all our presenters. It's always fantastic to hear about all the different things people are using. So for the last, what, I got 7 minutes, you're stuck with me. I'm going to try and go through because that stuff was super amazing, and I'll go through some of these updates for you as well. One update that's not on here that I did just see pop up today is Notebook LM popped up as an app on my phone. So Android phone, of course. It popped up. So I went to notebooklm.google.com and it said, do you want to install it? I went, yes. So now I have a Notebook LM app on my phone, which I didn't even know was a thing. If you're using Gemini, so there is now a Gemini app for iOS as well. And you may also see that Gemini Live is available in the apps as well, so you have the conversational backwards and forwards. So there we go, a couple of little bonus ones that we got in there. So let's have a look at this. So new look and feel for Google Calendar on the web. For those of you that love the nice look and feel, like I know my colleague Chris Betcher loves his outlook, his look of things, and spends time making things look absolutely beautiful, where I'm a bit more slapdash, and that's probably pretty good for me. This is a big update for people who like that nice new look. Better typography, so it's easier to read. It's more legible, it's much more crisp, and it sort of feels like it's easier to navigate around this new feeling. Sorry about that, Ryan. We can try and work on that one. So at the top, as always, on the right-hand side of the top here, there's my laser pointer. There it is. So this is the editions you'll see this in. So fundamentals, teaching and learning, security, and plus. So this is available for everyone. Moving to the next one, you may have noticed if you've opened a video inside of Google Drive, there is a new player. Now the new player means a couple of different things. It plays much better. It's much more lightweight. The controls are a bit more intuitive, and also there is the ability to have closed captions on there. You can see down the bottom, there is the closed captioning now that occurs inside of Drive. So new video player on the surface of it. You know, you think it's a new player, but there is actually some nice new functionality in there as well. And again, available for all the different editions. Moving on to the next one. There's been a whole bunch of new templates drop into slides. This one just appeared very recently. And yes, a lot of them are labeled as product pitch decks or investor decks, but it does give you some really cool layouts that you can use as well. There's a couple of introducing yourselves ones in there, so might be really good for start of the year next year, or even if you have a kind of getting to know you thing at your school. So lots of new different templates. It calls out lesson plans, book reports, and project reports in there. So lots of business ones, but also lots of new education ones. And if you do use vids, you'll notice these are very similar. There is quite a similarity in these templates. This is one that we have. I'm not sure, Donna. That's a very good question. I haven't seen whether it's US English or not. No, I'm not even going to guess. I have an idea, but I'm not going to guess because I know we're recording this. Not sure. I have to find out. Now, this is one of those ones that has been asked for a very, very long time, but also has created a lot of conversation. So expanding access to the Gemini app for teen students in education. So 13 plus has access to Gemini in your workspace account. So it is a Gemini for education account using this. Now, it is 13 plus, and that covers all the COPPAs and FERPAs and EU regulations as well. So 13 plus. So if you have a high school in New Zealand or Australia, generally your kids are going to be 13 at some point in their first year. So you may be able to switch it on. It's done via a group. And there are a couple of important things to call out. One of them is the free Gemini app. Thanks, Ryan, has data protection on it. So you have that enterprise level data protection on there. You can see the little shield that's on the same thing that teachers have as students have. Also, it means that no one reads your prompts. It doesn't go to train the model, data protected, doesn't go anywhere, stays in a local container. Also, you may, if you are an admin, you may have seen the notification that Gemini app will be a core service in the coming weeks for Education Standard and Plus users. Other people will have it as an additional service. So if you're using Plus, you will have seen that notification. I got it in my trainer domain saying that it will be changing into a core service very, very soon, which means it is a core service. You don't have to get those additional sign-offs for that. The teen experience is different than the over 18 experience. There are things, yes, Jeremy, very good point. You've got to make sure your age-based settings are correct. And if you are a school admin and you don't know what we mean by age-based settings, have a look inside your admin console. The Gemini for Teens experience doesn't have image generation. It has a very curated experience wherein if a student said, how do you go, what's the best way to buy alcohol in Auckland? Gemini will say you're too young to know that, so I cannot tell you that thing. So it has a lot of guardrails on it for students who are 13 to 18. 18 and above is effectively the adult experience, which I guess will tell you where to buy alcohol if you ask it. Don't know, I haven't tried that. Moving on. So this one, Google Vids. Now, for those of you on the call, just give us a thumbs up if it's landed for you yet. Okay, there's a couple of people thumbs up. Lucky Martin, Rach, it's landed for you. Most of us are, oh, Kathryn there. I'm still waiting. Donna, you've got it as well. Oh my goodness. I'm last on the train for this one. So it's not in my education account yet. And I was talking to a bunch of teachers today who are asking, when's it coming? So it was starting to roll out on the 7th. Oh, not in your school account. Okay. Yeah, no, school account's not yet. Only today. Okay, there you go. So it started rolling out on the 7th, and I think it's set on the rollout about a 3-week rollout. So we're getting near the end. Maybe one more week, and hopefully we'll get that as well. So lots of schools got it now. Thanks, Martin. Yeah, it seems to be hitting lots of people, which doesn't make people like me very happy when I don't have it yet in my school account. But a really cool tool. If you haven't looked at it yet, do have a look. It's available for Plus. You can see at the top. So it is available for Education Plus. It also, if you have a Gemini license, there is added functionality in there as well. So if you have a Plus license, you can create them. If you have a Gemini license, there is some additional Gemini magic at the beginning. Really great use case here is create a template, share it out to some kids, differentiate it in classroom. So give it out via classroom. Blue group gets this one, green group gets that one, orange group gets that one. 5 kids can work on it together. You've got your script writer, you've got your layout person, you've got your video person, you've got your person who's going to record their voiceover. So you have a really cool team-based video created. So if you haven't got it yet, like me, keep waiting. It'll be there soon. If you have got it yet, feel free to use it. So yeah, you're not wrong. The AI Test Kitchen, if you've got access to that, Kathryn, there's a lot of really cool stuff in there as well. Yeah, I'm loving music effects and the DJ version of music effects as well. Hours wasted. I thought arts and culture was the massive time waster. No, the AI Test Kitchen is my new time waster. My learning opportunity. And moving forward to the next one. If you have access to GEMS, so again, this is a Gemini license one for GEMS. You can upload files directly to your gem as well. So you might want to reference a marking rubric, so you can drop that straight into your gem. When we looked before, Kathryn was talking about sharing the instructions for a gem. So you can take the instructions into a doc, flick it off to a colleague, and they can drop that into their gem. So gems aren't shareable yet. The instructions are via a doc. And you can see here you can upload reference documents and a great big list of reference documents in there. So it may be that you want to reply using this resource, using this rubric to give feedback on this piece of writing, for instance. So lots of things you can upload into gems now. Gemini and Docs. So Donna was talking about Gemini and slides. There is also Gemini and Docs to create images. We talked last month about the idea to make a great big banner header. Now you can create some images inside there as well. Some people will jump out the Gemini app and then jump back in again. If you have the Gemini license, you are able to do this. So this is with Imagine 3, which is our most capable model of creating images as well. So that is 2 minutes over, not too bad. So that is at the end of this week's session and this month's session and this year's sessions. So there is a feedback form here we would love you to fill out. Let us know about timings. Is this the right time? Frequency, would you like it more frequent? Would you like it less frequent? Do you like the style of having lots of different presenters? I mean, after tonight, I don't think you could possibly say you don't like having different presenters, because the presenters were amazing tonight. Thank you all very much for your time and your wonderful sharing of what you do. Also, from that feedback form, we will do a swag draw, and I will send out some swag in time for Christmas for you. So if you go to bit.ly/LWG_FB for feedback, not that other social media, remembering small W, large G for that, or take a quick photo of the QR code. If you are looking for the QR code generator in Chrome, it has moved to the 3 dots and share. That's where you'll find the QR code creator in Chrome now. It has moved. Can I pop in chat? Yes, I definitely can. Let me jump over to the other one, and I am going to go through here, grab the link. Look at me doing 2 things at once. Crikey. Copy that into the chat. Thanks, Jen. Here we go. See, I even read something and talked and copy and pasted, and I think I might have copy and pasted the right thing. There we go. Yep, it's in there. Fantastic. Look at that. Whew. Talked and copied and pasted as well at the same time. So there is the link to that. Please do fill that out for us. That would be absolutely fantastic, because we do love the feedback. Feedback is definitely a gift. It lets us know what we're doing right and wrong and ways to improve. We do host all the previous webinars on a little YouTube playlist. So if there were any you missed at the start of the year, you can go back and have a little rewatch. This one I will be sharing out broadly, because there are some absolute gems of gold in there for people across both sides of the Tasman. So there is a YouTube playlist in there. This slides will also be attached to, thanks Donna. I really should, shouldn't I? Something I should think about. This will also be attached. This slide deck will also be attached to the calendar invitation, so you can always go back to that. I must admit, Donna, sometimes the multitasking was not the best of my abilities, so sometimes things go a little bit wonky. I paste the wrong thing into the chat, but thanks very much for your confidence in me. If you would like to get a little PD certificate for the hour you were with us this evening, there is also a link there to bit.ly GFE certificate, and it will do a magical little form with a little bit of magical add-ons. It'll flick you back a PD certificate for this, and that also you can jump into these slides and see those slides and jump into here if you really want to. So that is us for this evening and for another year. Shelley, you've just joined, but you'll be able to jump into the recording to catch up on what we were. So I'd love to very much to thank, go all the way back here, our presenters. There we go. Jeremy, Donna, Martin, Kathryn, and Ryan, thanks so much for sharing your wisdom. It's always amazing when we ask people to share things and they say, oh, but it's just this little thing I do. But other people watch it and go, that's amazing. So thank you very much for sharing just your little things you do and all the different apps you use across the things to help your students, which I think is the amazing thing as well. So I will wrap it up now. I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to say thank you very much for joining us either now or in the recording. Ka kite, folks, and Merry Christmas. I know it's only November and I should not be saying it that early. That's my rule, not everybody else's. But have a great break. You certainly deserve it. Please, when your break comes, gently place your school-issued computer in a drawer and do not open it for a good couple of weeks. Use the time off. You massively deserve it. And we all know that January realistically is the only holiday a teacher has, not the rest of them. So I will stop the recording now.